He lay in the mud, rain pouring, as bikers laughed and filmed. Then a shadow stepped forward, voice like thunder. "That man rides with me." What happened next stunned everyone. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The rain struck the pavement like spent shells, relentless and cold, carving rivulets through the grime of the roadside. Beneath the weak glow of a dying street lamp, Walt Briggs stood still as stone, his frame stooped not by age alone but by the weight of too many yesterdays. The army jacket he wore hung heavy on his narrow shoulders, soaked, threadbare, and dulled to the color of ash. Once that jacket had meant something. It had stood for valor, sacrifice, brotherhood. Now it was just another layer between him and the indifference of the world. Walt didn't look angry. He didn't even look surprised. Life had taught him long ago that cruelty seldom announced itself. It just arrived, uninvited, like a cold front. His face was a map of hard seasons, deep lines etched by sun and war, a jaw that held quiet defiance, eyes that flickered beneath the brim of his cap like fire long buried under ash. He'd known fear before, real fear, the kind that curled in your gut as mortars screamed and blood pooled under your boots. What he felt now wasn't fear. It was something colder, something lonelier. From the bar came another round of laughter, this one louder. The music inside roared, some southern rock anthem about whiskey and women, but it couldn't quite drown out the voices of mockery. Through the window, silhouettes raised bottles and slapped shoulders, their world intact and untouched by the man outside. To them, Walt was a punchline, a cautionary tale in boots. He shifted his weight, grimacing as his bad leg protested. A shallow puddle had formed around his worn-out boot. His duffel sagged beside him like a defeated dog, the fabric stained with time, the straps frayed. Everything about him told a story, but no one inside cared to listen. They hadn't seen the jungle rot, the red clay of Da Nang, the way boys screamed for their mothers when the choppers didn't come back. They only saw a silhouette in the rain, a relic with no place in their neon-lit kingdom. But Walt wasn't here to beg. He wasn't here for pity. He had come for one reason only, to make it to his granddaughter's graduation. That was the mission now. He'd missed too many moments already. Birthdays, school plays, Christmas mornings lost to the fog of memory and VA hospital beds. This time, he had promised himself he would be there. So he waited. And the rain fell, and the music inside kept playing, oblivious to the storm forming just beyond the glass. The rain hadn't let up. If anything, it hammered harder now, as if the heavens themselves bore witness to the cruelty playing out beneath the neon sign of the Iron Cross. Water coursed off the leather jackets of the men who stepped outside, pooling around their boots and soaking into the gravel. The bar door swung shut behind them with a thud, sealing them in a world of wet silence broken only by the faint thump of music from inside. Reese Trigger Dalton led the pack. His nickname wasn't earned from precision or skill, but from the way his temper flared faster than a match near dry brush. Mid-30s, bulked up from gym muscles, not hard-earned labor. His swagger wasn't strength. It was camouflage for insecurity, stitched together with patches and false pride. He squinted at Walt through the rain, then spat into the mud. "Hey, old man," he barked, his voice sharp with performative cruelty. "You're scaring off our women. Move on." Walt, still standing under the fractured light, didn't flinch. His coat clung to him like a second skin, heavy with years and soaked through, but he didn't bend. "Just waiting for the rain to pass," he said, calm and even. It wasn't defiance. It was resolve. Trigger took a step closer, looming now, face twisted with performative dominance. "I said move. You deaf, Gramps?" Walt's chin lifted slightly. The light caught the edge of his weathered face. "Been deaf in one ear since '71. What's your excuse?" That should have drawn a laugh from any man with a trace of spine. But Trigger wasn't wired that way. He was all bark and shallow pride, and he didn't like being made to look small. He struck. With a sudden shove, Trigger knocked Walt backward. The old vet's boots skidded in the mud, and he fell hard, back hitting the wet earth, his duffel splashing beside him. The laughter came fast, crude and mean. Some of Trigger's crew egged him on. Inside the bar, others raised their drinks toward the window. A few lifted their phones, capturing the image of a man brought low, not to remember, but to ridicule. Walt didn't cry out. He didn't beg. He simply lay there, blinking up at the rain, jaw clenched, dignity bleeding silently into the dirt. And still, no one helped. But somewhere inside the bar, amid the laughter and the liquor, Bo Reaper Jensen stood. His movement was quiet, unhurried, like a bear waking from hibernation. The crowd parted around him instinctively, their bravado dimming in his shadow. The patch on his back marked him as president of the Iron Cross MC, but his presence said more than patches ever could. He stepped outside. The rain soaked his braided beard and darkened the eagle stitched into his jacket. He looked from Trigger to Walt, his eyes cold and sharp as steel. And then he spoke. "That man rides with me." The silence that followed Reaper's words was thick and absolute, like the stillness just before a storm breaks loose. The laughter was gone, choked off mid-breath. The smirks faded. A few men lowered their eyes. Others looked between Reaper and the mud-soaked figure at his feet, as if seeing both for the first time. Even the rain seemed to quiet, softening to a hush as if giving space to something sacred. Trigger's swagger melted like wax in the heat. His face went pale, his mouth parted with a stammer caught behind clenched teeth. "Boss, I didn't know he was—" Reaper raised a hand, not in anger, but in finality. "Didn't know what?" he said, his voice steady, stripped of theatrics but sharp enough to cut bone. "That he was a soldier. That he bled for your freedom while you bullied drunks in a parking lot?" No one moved. Reaper's boots sank slightly as he stepped forward. He bent down, slowly, like a man performing a ritual, his broad hand extended, rain slipping down his fingers. Walt looked up at him, uncertain. For a moment, he didn't take the hand, not out of pride, but disbelief. Then he grasped it, and Reaper lifted him to his feet with surprising care, like helping a brother rise from the dust. The two men stood side by side, one weathered by war, the other forged in steel and asphalt. The contrast was striking, but so was the kinship. Reaper turned to his crew. His eyes didn't flash with rage. They burned with something deeper. Memory, reverence, clarity. "You think being tough is about noise and leather?" he said, his voice low and tight. "This man was tough before most of you were even born. Walter Briggs, Firebase Ripcord, 1970. The jungle was eating men alive, and he carried my CO out of a kill zone. Took 2 rounds in the leg and still came back for more. That limp," he gestured, "that's not weakness. That's courage you haven't earned yet." The name Ripcord hit like thunder among the older bikers, some of whom had fathers or uncles who'd whispered about that nightmare of a place. A ripple of stunned recognition passed through the crowd like a current. Trigger's face crumpled. He'd struck a legend and hadn't even known the weight of the name he was dragging through the mud. Walt, still catching his breath, glanced sideways. "You were with Colonel Henley?" Reaper nodded slowly. "I was just a scared kid on radio detail. You pulled him out, saved his life. And by extension," his voice softened, "mine." Walt blinked. Something in his face cracked, not from pain, but from the unexpected warmth of being remembered, being seen.
The gratitude he'd buried for decades now echoed in the voice of a man who owed him everything.
Then Reaper turned back to his men, his jaw firming again, and the silence held, like judgment waiting to fall. The morning air carried the scent of damp earth and sunlit asphalt, as if the land itself was waking from a long, bitter storm. The clouds had broken cleanly overnight, leaving streaks of golden light across the horizon, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the sky stretched open, clear, wide, and unashamed. Walter Briggs stood tall by the roadside, his posture not perfect, but proud. His limp was still there, subtle but present, a permanent thread in the tapestry of his life. But there was something new across his back now. A jet-black leather vest, stitched with care, the insignia of the Iron Cross MC emblazoned across the shoulders in silver thread. Beneath it, bold and undeniable, a rocker that read, "Honorary Rider." Not a token, not a pity gift, a declaration. The vest fit snugly, as if made for this moment, as if it had waited all these years for the right shoulders to bear it. The low growl of the Harley beside him wasn't just sound, it was promise. Gleaming chrome reflected the morning sun like armor, and atop it sat Bo Reaper Jensen, helmet in hand, offering it without a word. His eyes met Walt's with quiet intensity. "We're taking you to that graduation," he said. "Front row, family of the Iron Cross." Walt didn't speak right away. His fingers ran slowly over the patchwork on his chest, tracing the eagle's wings. Then came the faintest nod. "What about your boys?" Reaper smiled, a rare, grounded smile that softened the granite in his face. "They're following behind," he said. "No one gets left in the rain on my watch again." The engines roared to life in sequence behind them, 10, 20, more. Thunder on wheels, a convoy of chrome and leather, flags rippling like standards in the wind, the black and silver colors of the club bright against the morning. As they rumbled down the main street, people emerged from shops and doorways. Eyes widened. Some clutched hands to hearts. A few cheered, but most simply stood still, recognizing something bigger than spectacle. Respect, earned and displayed. At the school, the line of bikes peeled into the lot like a parade. Orderly, proud. Walt dismounted slowly, aided by Reaper's steady grip. The crowd parted without needing to be asked. Across the lot, a young girl in a cap and gown spotted him. Her knees buckled. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Grandpa?" She didn't wait for an answer. She ran to him, tears streaming, arms outstretched, and when she embraced him, she clung not just to a man, but to a legacy. And Walt? He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. She knew.